Deadwood Mosquito Memorial One, Stowe.
Richard Nelson, Orleans 1, Derby.
Michelle Boslin, Legal 3, which is Westminster, Rockingham, and Brookline in northern County.
Greg Burke, Cabot, Vandal Beecham. John O'Brien, Royalton and Tunbridge. Caroline's a constituent and Ramland customer.
And good morning all, Heather Supernaut, Barnard, Pomfret, Bridgewater, West Hartford. I'm balancing seating this morning and I'm sorry to miss you, Chris and Wyeth, but good to see you guys.
And
I'm Savannah, I'm a committee assistant.
so I'll turn it right over to you, Keith.
Well, thank you all so much for having our group today. Small Farm Action Day is a format Rural Vermont's been organizing for, I think, about a decade now. And it's really, we always organize it as an open format because we want to create an opportunity for stakeholders from the ag community to really learn about the legislative process, how a bill becomes the law, even how to navigate the legislative website. We did a training last night, and to learn how to become more active and engaging with your committee and the Senate of Agriculture. Bless you.
Thank you.
And to really feel encouraged to come reach out to their legislators and raise their voice, express their recommendations and their needs to your committee. That's why we traditionally organized most of these events as an open format, where we really don't prescribe like what will be the issues folks want to bring forward. Anyone is welcome to register. We actually even open up our registration for stakeholders from other ag organizations, whether that's the Farm Bureau, NOFA Vermont, or the watershed groups, to have their members, if they want, register as well to participate. So some of the issues you will hear today might relate to pending legislation. Some of them might not. Maybe there will be appeals to be made to still find a vehicle for some language that might be proposed. But we think, yeah, it's an important avenue just to have a couple times a year this kind of open dialogue with stakeholders from the ag community, and also give you the chance to get like broader impressions from those on the ground. What are the issues that penetrate them, and what might be the recommendations of theirs to address them. So with that, my piece is closed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So Beth, do you want to kick things off?
Yeah. I think I'm here mostly to thank you, because it's been I'm the baker Beth, so I bake sourdough bread in Lowell, Vermont for the NEK. And we're in our second year, but the H401, the cottage food law, increasing the monetary cap was what I spoke about downstairs, is super important for
Good.
my growth. So it's good timing. Yes. So
Excellent.
yeah.
Good timing. Yeah, we're gonna take the third reading on that bill. So speaking to the legislative process, this is pretty weedy. No pun intended. You're a baker, not a farmer, so I guess it's not a pun.
Yeah.
But so every bill has to be read 3 times, and we vote on it twice. So the third vote is today. Fingers crossed. Representative Burt reported it yesterday, and then it will go to the Senate. So it's good you had a chance to talk to them.
Yeah, and I use 100% New England ingredients. All the flours from Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Our cold pressed sunflower oil and hand harvested salt comes from New York, and we keep an affordable price, so nothing over $6.50 because of where we're located. And I work with 3 farms, the farm between Footbrook and Berry Creek, and Berry Creek is in a bread desert. She can't get anybody to deliver there, and it's very hard for her to get off the farm to pick up. So it's just we did a CSA model this year, so that's everybody's prepaid for their loaves, and they just every Friday come pick up. And yeah, so it's really exciting that now I can probably pick up, if it passes, I can open back up the CSA and maybe pick up 30 more families. It'd be like a huge thing up there. So yeah.
Representative Nelson, did you have? Yeah.
Bear Creek, that's in Troy.
Berry Creek on the border, Westfield,
Okay,
close to Troy.
yeah, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And do you do the Newport Farmers Market at all, or?
I don't, it's like, it's far. It's not far, but farmers markets are a lot of work.
There.
And they're great. They're not dependable. So if it rains and I show up with a car full of bread, that's why I switched to the CSA model this year. All the bread is paid for that I bake, which is super great. Because I've already bought all my grains from the farmers. So
Do you buy grains from Northeast Kingdom Grains? The-
NEK grains
NEK,
out of
yeah.
Waterford.
Yeah, yeah, with
Yep.
James.
I'm picking up next week, April 2nd. Yep.
Fantastic.
And then Nitty Gritty and Charlotte and Todd Hardy, he grew the rye. And then we got Tyler down at Granite Grains. He grows oats now, so we got all our oats
Yeah.
from him, which is really cool. And then the rest I just drove to Maine, picked up, I packed the back of my car with way more weight than I should. And so we're doing waffles in Jeffersonville this year, which will be cool with like einkorn and buckwheat and just trying to introduce those flavors before I bake with them to get people, because you can't just make einkorn loaf and be like, eat it. People want to pour maple syrup on it first. So, yeah,
Is that an ancient grain
it is an ancient grain. Yeah.
of the wheat sort of family or more like corn?
Not related to corn, just has corn in its name, KORN.
Representative Lipsky, did you have a hand up?
I did. I'm going back to when you first sat down. I didn't hear where you were from. It
Lowell,
was Lowell, not
Yeah.
Lowell.
yeah. Lowell, yeah. Mhm. Cool.
All right, Representative O'Brien.
Beth, can you just talk about the scale of your business? Like you mentioned this bill being a help, like would you like to expand into, retail markets at some point? Or do you like sort of
Yeah.
the scale you're
I like
at?
the scale I'm at. I like to drive to the farm and meet and, talk to Sarah and talk to Seth and then talk and have tea with Todd. But maybe I'd get a truck. That would be more helpful for my car. But the scale, this is our second year. So that it's good timing because last year I had to stop. I stopped baking in November. I hit the cap. I wasn't ready to get the license. I wasn't ready to take that step. I don't want to grow fast. And so this is just a good way for me to grow slowly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's nice.
Like your oven is like the oven you make.
We built our oven. So yeah, it's a wood fired oven. Everything's wood fired. And we do a lot of we're almost done with firewood, but yeah, for next year, but yeah. Yeah,
How many different varieties do you bake regularly?
we bake regularly for like 100% rye. It's Danish inspired, so we have a rug broad, a house, and a havre broad, and one's a very dense pork, good for slicing thin slices and toasting, and our house is like a sandwich loaf. They're all in tins, so they're more accessible and easier for the toaster. And then we do flatbreads, which are nice. You can dip, rip, make pizza, refry. Yeah, throw them on the grill. Yeah.
Where in Lowell are you located?
Before the general store,
Okay,
off of Route 100,
off of Route 100.
Rickabee Road. Yeah, right after Eden,
Okay, yeah, so you're south of the village a little bit.
south of the village. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, it sounds like a field trip.
Yeah. Jeffersonville will be at Jeffersonville doing waffles this summer at the farmer's market. So come have a waffle. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Right, so
Hello, my name's Christopher Piana from Barnard, Vermont. My son Wyatt is relating to this process that we find ourselves in currently. I think that Heather or someone might have tried to introduce some language too late for y'all. And so now testify to the Senate and hopefully they can add it into your miscellaneous ag bill. So I'm here to ask you to clarify 181 by crafting an amendment that exempts multi-use structures primarily used for farming and or AOFBs from requiring an Act 250 permit. I'll include suggested language in the written testimony here. So my brother and I, this will be our 17th year growing our farm, Fable Farm. What began as an organic vegetable CSA farm and wholesale farm in 2008 has evolved into a diverse vegetable, perennial fruit winery and cidery called Fable Farm Fermentary. Over these years, my brother and I have worked tirelessly to create a farming model that is financially viable, appropriately scaled to our land, and independent of the chemical-heavy practices required for certain markets. Our experience over time, and more recently through our work with the Farm Viability Program, folks, has made it clear that direct-to-consumer sales are essential for our farm survival. A few years ago, our wholesale to retail ratio was 80-20, 80 being wholesale. However, after a significant downturn in wholesale sales and losing over $10,000 due to unpaid invoices from national distributors, we made a major pivot to increase our direct sales. Throughout this evolution, one core principle has remained: cultivating a farm as an interactive place where people can connect with each other, the land, and the food and drink produced here. From our earliest CSA pickup days, we provided space for live music and shared meals at potlucks. This has been essential in drawing customers to our farm, allowing us to sustain our agricultural business. Music has never been a separate activity. It has always been a natural extension of our farm's culture and community engagement. A tangible example of this is that for the majority of these 17 years, it has been a sliding scale donation, 0 to 20. All beings are welcome. Then the last couple of years, we realized we needed to be able to pay the musicians, so we upped it to 5 to 25. That being said, everyone knows that if you can't afford, you're still welcome. So no one's turned away. So it's not like this is a separate kind of like music event experience. It's been the same for the last 17 years. In 2011, 4 farms, Kiss the Cow Farm, Eastman Farm, Heartwood Farm, and Fable Farm came together to form a cooperative to access land and share a lease of a beautiful idle dairy farm with the Vermont Land Trust. These farms evolved the Fable CSA pickups and potlucks into a veritable market called the Feast and Field, where for the last 10 years, we have collaborated with the local arts organization, Barn Arts, in our town to schedule the music, an organization that was established in 2011 sometime by one of our first interns. In addition to the market, our co-op currently has a lease on all the farmland on both sides of the road, as well as on a 275-year-old conserved barn located on the farm where the partner farms store and add value to their raw farm products. At the end of last year, the NRB issued us a notice stating that a multi-use pole barn structure we built last spring is in violation of Act 250 and requires a permit. Their rationale is that the structure was, quote unquote, principally constructed as a stage, and that Act 181 prohibits farms from building infrastructure for, quote, non-farm activity without a permit. However, this interpretation misrepresents the reality of our operation. The structure is used primarily for agriculture, storing hay, bottles, and farm equipment for most of the year, and it is only occasionally used 15 to 20 times in the summer as covered space for music. Moreover, the structure itself is a classic agricultural pole barn, built minimally using round spruce trees that we harvested and peeled ourselves. It sits on piers and blends into the natural working landscape of our farm. The town administrator recognizes it as an agricultural structure, and our project is fully supported by our community and the Barnard Select Board. We strongly believe that what we are doing is not commercial entertainment, but an expression of agricultural life, one that fosters community engagement and ensures the survival of small farms like ours. The structure in question is first and foremost an agricultural building. Good design allows for multi-use flexibility, and it is important that Act 181 reflects this reality. I urge you to clarify Act 181 by crafting an amendment that exempts multi-use structures, primarily used for farming and/or AOFBs, from requiring an Act 250 permit. We live in a world of nuance, and this amendment would provide necessary flexibility for those of us generally making a living from farming and enriching rural communities, while ensuring that unrestricted event spaces do not proliferate under the guise of agriculture. Thank you for the time to share my thoughts, and I'm happy to return for further testimony and provide additional background as much information as needed. I also warmly invite any and all of you to visit our farm and to see our work firsthand.
Thank you, Chris. Representative Nelson.
Thank you. Agritourism.
Yes.
it's what you're doing, you're promoting agriculture. And I don't see why that could be exempt from Act 250. We have a small family, up home that have a stage, and they are the musicians. I mean, they farm and they like to sing, and not even sure if they charge anything, and they have a tip jar out, and that'd be about it. I can remember them going through some of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And you got a pole barn that you break down when prudent to use for this. Do you sell products there at that event?
Oh, yeah, it's our bread and butter, it's our livelihood. We've developed a market that really works well for us over these 17 years. And like I said, we've explored wholesale markets and we're selling, say, $150,000 around the country. And then right now we're at like 40. And it's a hard sell with a contracted consolidated distributors. I have no recourse to go after that $10,000 unpaid invoice. Whereas maybe if I was a dairy farm, you could extract that money directly, but we don't. And so it became pretty clear that we needed to pivot and to sell direct. And so that's what we're really leaning into. And we've been able to create a very unique thing because of the co-op. So we produce lamb, chickens, layers, pork, beef, perennial fruit like schisandra berries, sea berries, blueberries, all these different fruits, herbs, vegetables, and apples, wine, grapes, vinegar. And so we did get a JO opinion. We got a jurisdictional opinion at the early days of this project for that barn that I'm describing to you. That is exempt. So a multi-stakeholder farmer cooperative has a jurisdictional opinion for that barn. And they're saying that this whole barn that we also use as a cover for musicians 15 to 20 times is in violation. When our town was never made aware of that violation, like I said, the zoning administrator and the select board member, we've been in conversation. So I understand if there was like a big hoopla in the community and they needed to rein some things in, right? But we have full support. And it's an odd kind of like practice that we would just receive an NRB letter, and instead of having the NRB approach us, what do you have going on? So we can get a clarification, and it was more of just like an accusation. So
What was the timing? When did you get that?
we got that in probably the end of last year.
2024.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Richard.
so am I correct that if you sell 51% of your product at a farm stand, it's Act 250 exempt?
So this is a different situation, I think. If the farm stand is only used as a farm stand, yes, but the concern here, or the issue, I think, is something different, that there's another use happening. Arguably, right? That's what the claim is. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, just following up on that. So it was complaint driven originally?
Well, this is now where we get into the speculation. But we learned without any communication to us, once we got our tax bill that just exploded, that we were removed from the current use program. And so then I talked to the legislator, because this is the old dairy farm in our town. These are two abandoned dairy farms that we're farming. We talked to our who used to be the lister, who's a select board member, and he said, well, actually, we called the current use, asked them what happened. And they said, we removed you from the program because at the behest of the outside community contracted assessor. And so then when I talked to the select board member, he said, give me the language to write our assessor and ask him to see the property cards, et cetera. And so he qualified his whole reasoning, which didn't make any sense at all. Clearly, he just made all of these whimsical kind of determinations that were commercial without asking us. So we corrected all of his misunderstandings around like his reasoning, as well as invited him to come tour the facility and learn about our project, because it is a pioneering project, right? And we haven't heard from him. The current use folks restored our classification, but now we're enduring a long audit process there, which will be fine because there's nothing to hide here, and it'll all work out. But then 4 weeks later, we got a letter from the NRB. And so, I mean, that's where there's speculation. We don't know. The select board member that I'm in contact with, pretty sure. that's what happened, because that's when we've met with Anson Tebbets and Steve Collier, we've met with John Groveman, we've met with Steve, Katie Gallagher. We've met with a lot of people in this, right? Because it's bringing us into the arena right now. Like, how can we change this sort of absurdity, to be quite honest with you? And everybody's question is, what'd you do? Right? Well, and we had, until that point, had no idea, because when we were young farmers, just starting Fable Farm, we were in the center of town. That CSA pickup I told you about, all of a sudden blew up, right? So in our bedroom community, no stoplights, everybody started coming together. Micro enterprises sprouting out everywhere. It was just like bringing life back to a bedroom community. But then we were young and didn't really know how to, like, it was in the fishbowl, right? And so we had to go through growing pains. Had a situation with the town, and like massively packed house supported us completely, because that was 2008 crash of properties. And so you had real estate agent blaming young people. But we've gone through that process. We've been humbled. We've realized that we have no politics. We don't belong to a box. We're just trying to create rural sensibilities here of like how rural people can live and generate a living without being hamstrung by like silly kind of arbitrary. I mean, I get it's all complicated, but I fully believe in the design of nature, right? And so inherent in the design of nature, there's always the healing antidote already in the program, like bacteria neutralizing radioactive waste, for example. It's amazing, really. So I feel as legislators, it's like y'all can help us develop nuance in the laws that can support people who are devoting their life to pursue a path of health and of community development, because that and of farming. And so, long-winded digression. This is a big project for us, and it's a humongous event. Actually, it's a really seminal experience in Vermont. And if you've never been there, I highly welcome you come here. That what we've created, and I think there are a lot of people pulling for it right now, and this is going to be up if we can't get language in that bill, because
You say it's going to be up.
I feel like I just think it's in a very precarious position right now. If we have to go through this entire long protracted process of trying to figure, yeah.
Chris, has the NRB given you some sort of guidelines on why this multi-purpose building? Is it a number of concerts because they think you charge for them? I mean, it's just interesting if you take what you did and then say we go to Brownington and Amish farmers there, sung hymns, I'm sure the NRB wouldn't go out and say, that's not a farm barn anymore. You're singing hymns in your barn.
Yeah, and what we did one event last year where we partnered with like another organization to promote green energy. And that was a first time for us. But we actually for the first time brought other prepared food vendors on our farm, but we they all signed contracts that they had to use all of our products. So still the feature of the event was our farm products, which we believe if we are executing in that way, that there should be no jurisdiction, because this is an agricultural state and the agricultural exemption should exist in this situation. So we came back to them and explained our reasoning, and they wholeheartedly disagreed and put forth like a 10-page paper documenting the last 10 years of what we've used as stages, these like little janky 4x8 pieces of things we built that we can move around. And so I think their stream of logic, again, I'm not really in their room with them or like discussing with them, but their logic is that we built this non-farm structure principally for a stage. Sure, we posted on our Instagram of this structure as a stage, but just like we have so many mixed use structures on our farm, literally the tasting room and crush pad, and we have a cave underground. We have a walk-in cooler, thousands of pounds of meat, thousands of pounds of onions, all these different facilities within our space, but nowhere where we can store hay, nowhere where we can put a tractor underneath. Literally, it's like, if we had this reductionist kind of perspective with all things, I mean, I get it. We need a reference to make laws, but at the same time, like, it's a little interesting to come after, for organic farmers that have figured out a market to sell our products where we're not having to take on grants to expand institution markets, all the great work you're doing. It's like we figured it out. And if the food that we're not producing, we're buying from like amazing farms too to support, like Morningstar or like or Shelburne Farms cheeses. So it's like, I don't know. Sorry. Thank you.
I just want to honor everyone who came today. We have like 6 more people to chat about.
Yeah, thank you,
30
Caroline.
minutes.
I was going to say that we can, I was going to say what Caroline said. So thank you, Chris. And we can continue to have the conversation offline, and we may, we may find that
Sorry.
have other conversations.
Yeah.
I appreciate your coming in. I hope you can stay. Good. Chris, do you want to be next time?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm Chris from Green Mountain Sativa. Sorry, I have my notes because I'm nervous. I've never been done this before.
Let me put you at ease by asking where you're from.
I'm from Stockbridge,
Stockbridge?
Vermont. Yep, next to Chris and Barnard and Christopher. We got to get that straight. I run a small sun-grown cannabis farm, and I'm here to discuss direct to consumer. I would like to be able to sell off of my farm direct. I can read this whole thing, or you can ask me questions if you want to know, because the other people didn't want, they just kind of wanted to ask questions about what direct to consumer meant.
How big is your operation?
I farm about 1 acre, so 125 plants.
Does it make you a small?
That makes me a small cultivator.
And we have different categories.
Yeah. I'm the smallest. I did go up to a tier 2 this year, so I can grow more plants. So that I can, there's still a lot we don't know about the cannabis plant. There's a lot of varieties. There's so much that you can't do on big farming that I can do on little farming. But there's a bottleneck that the retailers hold all the cards, so I get $15 out of 50, basically. And it's just not sustainable.
So, meaning when you wholesale to a retailer
Or a wholesaler.
or to the next level, you
Yeah.
get $15 and.
I get 50.
50, okay.
Yeah, I've talked to my retailers. I mean, they support what I would still sell to retailers as well, but I'd like to be able to build my brand, from my farm. I want like people to come to my farm and see what my farm does and that I'm growing fully sustainable, regenerative farming, no-till. I use inputs from my farm. It's a complete circle to feed everything. And so that's but I would like to be able to have people come by for an event which I fully understand. I'm not saying I don't want regulations, that I could have, say, for a farmer's market, on my property that's gated 21 plus, but people could come in and maybe see me, other farmers, without having to go to retail. There's a lot of people that aren't shopping at retail still. That I used to have when I had a CBD farm. I was allowed to do all this when I grew CBD, but we know how that works. The hemp farm market just dropped. Right? So I'm trying to prevent that from the same thing from happening here. Once the big people came in you can't do cannabis like you did hemp. Hemp was in big fields. They could do thousands of acres like tobacco. You can't do that and do it well with cannabis. It's all about the small. I touch every plant every day. I am the solo farmer. It's just me. So I don't make a lot of money. I'd like to expand. I'd like to have employees. I'd like to have some help. I don't have the money for that. So
I'll ask another question. How many do you sell just to one wholesaler, or do you have?
I had one wholesaler and 22 retailers that I sell to around the state, which is good. I'm doing okay, but some of my friends aren't. Because I got into the market early, and what I see happening is a lot of us who got into the market in that first or second year are doing much better than those that got in the third year. It doesn't mean they're not as good of farmers. It just means they didn't get in soon enough to get into, because each dispensary pretty much has 8 or 10 growers and a lot of those growers are the same indoor growers from, in every dispensary. So there's not a lot of room for all of us. That's what I would that's what I'm hoping for.
Representative Nelson?
So would you propose that you could have your grow license and then have a license to sell as well? Is that what you're proposing? I talked to a gentleman up home who has a grow license and they're vertically integrated.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah, so you would like to have because I don't believe they're giving out any more retail licenses.
Correct.
Would you like to see that opened up so you could have both?
A retail license,
I'm just asking.
yeah, I know, I'm
not-
trying to think how to
Yeah.
answer, because I don't think a retail license, in my town, there's no retail allowed. They haven't had that opt-in yet. You can
Okay.
grow, but you can't retail in Stockbridge.
Okay,
So it would mean building a building, it's a lot of work that, I'm a farmer, I don't have a time.
I understand.
Yeah.
So, could
Yeah, go
they
ahead.
modify it that it's a seasonal license?
100%, yeah,
Yeah, you'd like to be able to sell, because you're an outdoor grow, I assume?
I am.
So your product's not ready until late August anyway?
My product's ready the end of October usually, and it's not
October.
ready until February. So that's the other thing, we have.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
curing and whatnot, so you
right,
could,
exactly.
you could do it.
I'm impressed.
Hey, and I never partook in it. I know, the only thing I know is a little bit about what we did to hemp and took them
Yep.
back.
Yeah, exactly.
So you.
I was there.
Yeah. So you'd like to be able to, harvest your product, sell some retail, wholesale, whatever, pay the gross bills, but have enough left over that maybe you could add some profit to your business in the summertime while you're growing and do farm tours and
100%.
100%.
That is exactly.
So,
I wouldn't stop selling to retailers. That's not my goal. It's just I want to need a little extra.
and so we need a different license type maybe.
Yeah, so I've thought about it, like a license type or a fee for having these, so when I used to have Croptober, which was my festival I had that was hemp related, then I had to get permits to have that event. You had to get permits to have a festival. You have to get permits to have liquor on site. You know what I mean? The same kind of thing. We don't have public consumption, so we wouldn't be able to do any consumption on site, but it would allow me to meet people, show them my farm and show them why my farm makes a difference from the 500-acre farms.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Representative O'Brien?
Just following up on that. How much in the cannabis world can, you talk about your branding, but that you could grow something that's totally different than what Richard would grow, it's partly terroir, partly processing. Just speak to that a little bit. Like, I don't understand that as far as tomatoes versus cannabis.
So it's different between indoor and outdoor. Outdoor cannabis, in my experience, I'm going to say this because someone is higher in terpenes, higher in cannabinoids. THC is the molecule that all of the retailers are going by right now, that the highest THC is what people want to buy. But that's not the best part of the plant. There's cannabinoids, there's terpenes that are good for, I'm a type 1 diabetic. I have several autoimmune diseases, and there's a lot of things that helps with. And it helps me, but just to have that connection, to get people to buy I don't know what you produce, but your milk or your bread or whatever it is, I can't connect with them. Once a year, I'm invited to stores that carry my product to go in and have a growers day to talk to people, but it's so small, and I invite you all to come I know you're down, come to my farm and visit and see what it's about. I have restricted access. I have a gate. I would like to have a farmer's market where I could have my friends come and sell their sun-grown cannabis. Not on-site consumption. And I don't know how you do that because you have a liquor license that you can do that, but it's not federally legal and there is no on-site consumption. So it's a little bit tricky, but I still think it could happen. Maybe I could register with the CCB a percentage of my products to go directly to farm sales, a separate product registration. I'm not sure, but I'm willing to learn and I'm happy to come back and talk about it.
Thanks for giving us the idea. We need to move on if we
Okay.
can hear from everybody. But if you can stay when we take a little break, we can check in with
Definitely.
folks who have questions. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and for taking my testimony. My name is Ethan Kramer. I'm from Fairfield. My wife and I have a small plant nursery, and like Chris, we hold a tier 1 outdoor cultivator's license. So that's the smallest license that you can have. I grew up in Fairfield, and as a kid, everybody was a farmer, seemed like. It was the rare family that didn't have a barn full of cows, and now there are a couple of big farms. The cows never go outside, and there are a couple of farms that are organic or grass-fed, and those are the farmers that we look up to. And I think that Vermont has done so far an excellent job with our cannabis market, but I feel like we're at a turning point. Some of the issues that Chris raised, it isn't that there's overproduction, it's that there aren't enough avenues for us, for the small farmers, to get the product out there. It's a bottleneck. And so we're just looking for a way, like any other business, to try to connect with those consumers and try to build our brand and continue to do what we do. You know, we also, like most outdoor growers, we're not using synthetic inputs, where it's closed loop production, where we do it all ourselves. And what we know about cannabis is that it's just not as good when you're growing it in acres of greenhouses. The product is not as good. Chris was talking about the difference between outdoor and indoor, and that's definitely real. It's just, we think that we can nail it all down with science, but there's a lot more to it. It's not just THC. It's more complex than that. And we think that Vermont has the potential, again, with cannabis, to have a really unique thing that's world class. But if we lose the small farmers, then it's just going to be the big producers, and then we're just going to be like everybody else. It won't be something that will draw people to Vermont.
Thank you. Representative Burt?
To echo, I think, it's important that it happen, throughout the state and on by small farms. Right? We want this to be something that's an economic driver. So I'm in complete agreement about doing something.
Thank you.
To move the needle. So
Thanks.
Representative Bustle?
No, I'm good.
Were you farming before cannabis was recreational cannabis?
The plant nursery. Yep. We've been growing trees from seed and doing that stuff for quite a while. About 10 years now. Just building up nursery stock and putting plants in the ground, and mostly nut trees and some fruits.
Representative O'Brien?
Amongst small growers, sort of on the genetics side, is there development of, new types of cannabis? I mean, just the way, like, people are grafting apple trees, looking for something new or finding that perfect wild apple. Is it the same thing in the cannabis?
Absolutely. And because this is Vermont, and because of how much moisture is in the air and how much it rains and our clay soils, it's like the varieties that work here, like things that work in other places in a dry county in Oregon where they don't get any rain, that's not going to necessarily, probably not going to do very well in Vermont. So a lot of us are making seed. We're furthering these generations here because the plants learn what they had to deal with in one season, and they pass that on in the seed. It sounds a little crazy, but it works. And it's really clear that the next generation is better suited to Vermont than the first one. It's pretty cool.
And who do you sell to? Are you selling to retailers?
Retailers.
Same retailers that Chris mentioned? Or?
Not as many as Chris. No, we don't have 22 retail partners. We have a few, we like them. We don't, there aren't that many retailers. And frankly, we don't want to work with all of them. We're not aligned. Our principles are not aligned with all of them. I'm not a great businessman. I'll run across the room to dive onto my own sword. It's like, I just won't work with people. So That's,
That doesn't necessarily make you a bad businessman. Other questions? All right, good. Thank you.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Buster, I think you're next on the list. You'd like to join us?
Good morning. Thank you for your time. Officially, I'm Ernest Caswell, but many of you know me as Buster. I live in Milton. I work at Champlain Orchards down in Shoreham, Vermont, and I'm a volunteer with Pavstone Corporation. Pavstone do employment in training and farm safety, pesticide workshops from the National Farm Workers Jobs Program. And I grew up in Randolph, Vermont, and I've been an FFA member, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve. And I love working on our farms. And in order to grow food in Vermont, in order to meet the needs of the farm to plate goals and meet the goals of the food bank and to continue growing food in Vermont. And it is growing. We need a home. We need a home. Farm workers, no matter where they come from today, or if they've been here 80 years, we need a home. In 2021, Vermont Housing Conservation Board issued a report. It's only 65 pages. Maybe you have read it, maybe you haven't. It's on their website as one of the resources. And then the report was on the farm house. On the farm house. And that's an old report, 2021. That was the beginning of COVID. And since 2019, there was a first an in-person farm worker housing meeting, and then over the years, the last one was 2023. So it's been since the fall of 2023. Dan Baker held some informal stakeholder meetings. You can hear a little bit about that in that report. Many of us. So since that report came out, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board did 2 funding awards on repairing and improving on the farm housing, $30,000. And the other one to replace or rebuild on farm housing, new homes. And that's $120,000. Very successful and underfunded. And I believe you have heard from Champlain Housing Trust on their work. And to keep this work going and to meet the needs and to meet the goals of growing our food, we need a farm worker housing committee, a task force. That task force can bring together studies and data, recommendations, for example, tax incentives. They will recommend that our nonprofits or the private sector build homes off the farms. Our farmers, not all of them can invest on the farm housing. And the $120 that comes from Vermont Housing Conservation Board is just a tiny fraction of what's needed. One of their success stories, it took 6 or 7 funding sources, all out of here of Vermont. A little bit of V-Light, Efficiency Vermont took part of it, and so on and so forth. And so we need a committee so you folks can recommend, and the needs and the recommendations for our communities to, one, keep what's just started a few years ago ongoing, and the other one to develop recommendations to build homes off the farms. For example, New York, Maine, my organization, Postone, you can find it all across the country, California, Oregon, anywhere where there's a history of agriculture and a large population. We have a large history and it's growing. They built homes off the farms. So farm workers, beginning farmers, retired farmers have a home to live and work on any farm they want to, because sometimes you're needed here, sometimes you're needed over here, and on a dairy farms, you need it all the time. A farm worker housing committee or a task force can make those recommendations. So not only your committee can further the work that's just started, and I hope it don't end, please fund the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And we need to go it because we need a home. Farm workers come from all over the world, work in our great state. Come from Jamaica, Mexico, South Africa, even Canada, to work here in Vermont. And we need them. And this week is National Farm Worker Awareness Week. If you'd like to look at an example of our governor recognized and issued a proclamation for this week. So in your own ways, let's give thanks to the people who are not here giving testimony, asking you to build them a home. We need a home. And it doesn't have to be on the farm. A developer could do it off the farm. So we all can grow and have food here in Vermont. Vermont only grows 3 months supply of Vermont. We need to increase that. There's 63,000 people working in agriculture, about 9,000 working on farms. 63,000 is more than the population of Burlington. And we all need food, and a home will do that. And a committee will make recommendations and strategies and studies so you guys can continue to grow our food here in Vermont. Thank you for your time. If there's any questions, please feel free while I'm here. And please, I recommend Dan Baker continue those ad hoc groups, but it'd be great if one was created to bring you what you need to keep the work that's going on now ongoing. Champlain Housing Trust needs more money. Efficiency Vermont needs more money. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Buster. We had a really very informative presentation a week or two ago from Dan, who updated us on he wasn't able to come in person, but
I've been working with Dan. I've encouraged him all the time. He's held 7 meetings. We need more. The last one was in November of 2023. You can find a little bit of information on farm housing. Last November during the statewide housing conference, they brought up to date the work being done now, but that's just scratching the surface, folks, compared to other states.
let me just check. We have Jean listed on the agenda. Was anyone else gonna?
I think that's it.
Okay, all right. Did you want to, I'm sorry.
Just a quick,
Question from, yeah.
we're working on several bills, H 134, 267. And another one up there, all do with current use. And Rep. Boslin brought up a point of housing for farmers or a retired farmer staying on his land. And his house now becomes available for the next generation. And so these are things we're all working on, recognizing, and others, but recognizing part of this issue. And the reason we didn't vote it out we found out it's a lot deeper issue than when we started with it, so all things we're working on.
Thank you. And please, if you're in contact with Dan Baker, ask him to hold some more meetings. I constantly say we need more dialogue because that's the missing piece of the dialogue. There was dialogue, and then a report came out in 2021. You saw the work from that, over 200 farm workers, I don't remember the numbers. You saw the numbers and how successful that is, and we need to grow from that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jean Hamilton. I am the Director of Program Development for the Land Access and Opportunity Board. And I'm very happy to be joining my friends from the rural Vermont community here. One thing I wanted to flag, building on there he is, what Buster said, is there is a bill that I think is in House Housing now called H169 that proposes to limit landlords' requirement to provide a social security number when seeking a rental unit. This is something that has been put forward by Migrant Justice and the farm worker community as something that would really increase rental opportunities for farm workers. So if you haven't already familiarized yourself with that, it'd be a great thing to look at. I'm here actually to talk about future land use mapping. And as from my position in the Land Access and Opportunity Board, I've had the pleasure of working with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission as they are pursuing their future land use map that was mandated by Act 181. All of the regional planning commissions are currently in the process of issuing new future land use maps as defined by that act. In very short summary, 181 mandates that all of the RPCs use the same terminology on their future land use maps. And then also the purpose of this edition of future land use maps is to map out the new Act 250 paradigm. So to illustrate where is Tier 1 and the zones that go in that. These maps do not actually map out Tier 2 and Tier 3. Those will be forthcoming as Act 250 rolls out. But something that's become clear from observing a number of the focus groups that Chittenden County RPC has been hosting is that there's not a really good sense of what is the future of agricultural land on these maps. Currently, the way agricultural land is being mapped on the maps is based essentially just on current use. So we have no information on these future land use maps of our future agricultural lands. This comes at a time when, of course, we know from many, many different reports that we are losing agricultural land, that if we want food security in this state, that we actually need to think strategically about how to make sure that agricultural land stay in agriculture. And there are a number of threats to agricultural land, from loss of land to flooding, conversion loss due to farmers retiring and then that land moving out of agriculture, and then also loss as we do make efforts to rightfully develop more housing. If we don't have a strategic sense of what are our agricultural land resources and how do we strategically prioritize them to our food security and farm security plans, we don't have a sense of, it's just sort of willy-nilly what's going to happen to our ag lands. So what I'm proposing today is that we correct for something that was missing in 181 and add a request or a mandate to the RPCs that they create a future land use map dedicated to agriculture, that we actually map out the agricultural resources we have in our state so that we can actually have a strategic plan of how we, what ag lands do we need, what type of ag lands do we need, and then we, the whole community of the lawmakers and the advocacy organizations and the funders, can work together in a concerted way to actually, protect those agricultural lands. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any points. Oh, I know what I missed. For the record, I would like to share what kinds of data would be helpful to include in this map. We'd like to see current agricultural land that ANR has. Prime ag soils should be included, as well as soils of state relevance. We'd like to see agricultural land that is in current use, as well as agricultural land that are in agricultural easements. It would be helpful to know which agricultural lands are currently certified organic, and then it would be helpful to project out which lands are particularly at risk of conversion, either due to flooding, retirement of farmers, or loss to development. On that loss to development, you may know that Tier 1, if anything that's moving into Tier 1, will now be exempt from Act 250. While that Tier 1 designation is intended to create growth areas, which I fully support, it also restricts opportunity to look at what happens to agricultural land in these Tier 1 areas. And so that, I believe, is a sort of unintended or a collateral damage of taking out some of what is now currently rural land and putting it into Tier 1 in the areas that surround growth areas, designated downtowns and villages. And in the focus groups that I've observed with Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, this has been an issue that has come up in every focus group as we look at those Tier 1 areas and we say, well, how will we as a community map out what are important agricultural resources in those Tier 1 areas? Without this kind of map, we have no tool to look at that. It basically goes back to each town to rely on their town zoning if they have it, which of course puts this another burden on undercapacity towns to think about another layer of complexity. And so 2 other layers that would be helpful in this future agricultural land use map is underutilized agricultural land that would help us reach our New England Feeding New England goals, and then additional agricultural lands that we would need to reach those goals. On the point of underutilized ag land, I want to raise up an issue that's very important to the Land Access and Opportunity Board, which is that we start thinking about agricultural land in more complex ways, not just as the sort of how we have thought about viable ag land in the past, which tends to be large tracts of land in rural areas that assumes a certain kind of agricultural marketplace that tends to be more wholesale market driven. As the climate change and the markets change, I think we all agree we want to have food security in this state. We believe very strongly that that will look like more smallholder agriculture and empowering more Vermonters to participate in the culture of agriculture. That may look like community gardens. That definitely looks like having more spaces for growing food built into our built environment and built into our designated downtowns. Those kinds of resources, which right now don't map at all as agricultural resources, are something that LAOB's communities that we serve very much want. Our communities do not want to just live in affordable housing downtown without access to land. Many of our communities come from cultures where growing food is part of what makes them whole. And we, just like towns have municipal forest, we can have towns that have municipal farms and municipal farmland available. That may be 1 acre. It may be a half acre. Right now, those kinds of parcels don't register anywhere in any kind of statewide strategic planning. And that's the hope with this map, is we could actually work through our RPC infrastructure to make a strategic map that then we can build plans together on how do we strategically conserve ag resources while also creating space to build more housing. Thank you.
Before I call on Rep. Lipsky, and we're running out of time, when you mentioned the list earlier of what you would like to see included, is that all data that exists that would just need to be somehow obtained and then put into a map, or would there need to be some effort put into defining maybe and then collecting the data?
Thank you. My understanding is that most of those are data sources that exist. I think we would, the underutilized agriculture needed and the additional agricultural land needed, there are some data points that come from New England, Feeding New England, but I'm not sure if they actually map out into
Yeah.
parcels.
If I just want, may add for the record, Caroline Trippin Gordon with Rural Vermont. So New England Feeding New England has projections of how many additional acres would be needed region-wide, including all 6 New England states, for meeting just even us producing 30% of the food consumed. Ryan Petch had testified in this committee that that would essentially mean that Vermont would have to double its footprint of agricultural acres in production. So that would give regional planning commissions like a landmark, and that's why we need statewide mandates. This is why we can't just advocate for this on a grassroots level, planning commission by planning commission. We need a statewide cohesive approach, because bringing twice as many acres as we currently have into agricultural production would give regional planning commissions an incentive to think about where should these acres be. This is why we need the map, not just to look at where is agricultural acres, but where should they be if we lose that many acres? As a recommendation, we all know it's not going to be legally binding, but as a recommendation, so that we can build our policy considerations for actually protecting that farmland on those recommendations.
Thank you. I see that recommendation being very similar to the housing targets that the RPCs right now are focusing on for each municipality, that interpreting the housing targets at a municipal level, RPCs could do a similar kind of interpretation of the total acres we're looking for, and then target it in a way, in a strategic way that, again, balancing all of these competing factors.
So we're over time. Rep. Lipsky did have his hand up, and I did tell him secretly, silently, that he would get to ask it. So
Jean,
Yes.
thank you, gentlemen. And you got to it at the very end.
Mhm,
And what I wanted to ask you about has to do with scale.
mhm.
Because scale, we found with food production, particularly vegetables, fruits, don't take the same kind of acreage, commercial dairy or other than grass-fed beef. So this really granular detail is very important, because you just allowed that a half acre could feed a village or an acre. So when we're asking and advocating for this deep dive into tier 1 mapping, or are we talking, between an acre and 5 acres, an acre? You want to, because these can go a long way. It's the right soil.
Mhm.
So scale.
Thank you. I am not a mapper and I'm not a planner, so I don't know how, I don't want to offer something that is unfeasible in terms of what RPCs can do. Having observed the mapping process they're in now, I see that what it allows for the RPCs to do this is that they can aggregate different data sources and say, oh, okay, so here's prime ag lands, here we are in a development area. And look, there is this area, that is only 1 acre or 5 acres. And then through this community engagement process, what they're doing now is towns and actual citizens can come in and say, actually, this parcel is really promising, and that can be a way that then the RPCs can help support towns in thinking about zoning that would really protect some gems that are in there that might fall out of an analysis like current use, which is just a much broader stroke.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your question.
all right, I know we've got other questions, and other folks who, if we'd had more time, might have wanted to testify, but we'll have to stop there. Thank you all for coming in and sharing with us. We're going to take a short break here. 5 minutes committee, and so you can snag somebody in the hall.